Hi there. Today I'm looking at a favourite wine of mine. It's a Greek wine from the island of Santorini, an Assyrtiko, and the producer is somebody called Sigalas. This is the 2020 vintage of this. There are a few really good producers of Santorini Assyrtiko, and it's very popular at the moment. But the key to Santorini Assyrtiko is not necessarily the winemaking. The winemaking is quite straightforward. The wines are made in stainless steel tanks with cooled fermentation, and they'll probably be aged for a short period with the yeast lees to add a little bit of weight to the mid palate. That may be stirred up, and then they'll be bottled probably within the first year of being made, if not earlier. The wines, however, what creates their style is the grape variety Assyrtiko and the viticulture on the island of Santorini. Santorini in the Aegean, it's a Greek island there, and it's basically it's the remains of a volcano. It's a volcano cone, so it's in a crescent shape. So the soils are entirely black volcanic sand and rock, and these soils are make it impossible for phylloxera, the grape louse, to live there. So these grapes grow entirely on their own roots, and so what happens is, instead of training them onto wires, because of the really quite arid conditions in Santorini, they want to stop the grapes from getting sunburn and to retain as much of the water as possible. The grapevine grows up out of the ground and is then trained round in a circle to create a basket of vegetation on sort of dark, dusty ground. So, thankfully there's very little humidity there to cause any rot, because that wouldn't work. But in this basket that's woven out of the vine with the leaves there, the grapes grow in the shade of the leaves in the centre of that. So you end up with a vineyard that almost looks like a vineyard of little, say, dragon nests or something bizarre like that. So, as you can imagine, making these wines is quite backbreaking work, because going around and harvesting the grapes from out of these baskets is quite difficult. The vines tend to be very old as a result of this. I mean, the notes on this say that the vines for this are at least 60 years old. So you're getting low yields. Then there's not a lot of water there, so that restricts yields as well. You've got a really concentrated fruit, and the grapes are picked while they've still got really good acidity, so there's lovely freshness to them as well as concentrated fruit. So they can be fantastic matches for food. Anyway, let's have a look at this. The wine is a medium to deep pale yellow with greenish hints. So it's fairly unremarkable to look at. Let's have a smell. Now the aromas are quite contrasting. You have what is a neutral grape variety, and yet it is showing some notes of lime blossom and lime. There are honeyed notes, there are toasty notes, but this hasn't been aged in oak, so the toastiness, I think, is coming from fermentation aromas, and there is an intense minerality. What do I mean by minerality? Sort of a dustiness, a whetstone note, a flintiness. All of those elements are in there, and none of them particularly stands out. They're all in there nicely together, with this sort of overtones of sort of honey, maybe a slight note of bruised apple, and behind that, actually, also from the aging with the lees, the dead yeast in the wine, you've got a slightly creamy note as well. So there's plenty going on in the nose. Let's see what the palate offers. Tasting that, it's really quite toasty to begin with. As I say, that's a fermentation note. It's completely dry, and it's got really, really crisp acidity. It's not tart, but it's that, and I think that's part of the minerality side of it as well. Is a really sort of flinty crispness there, sort of clean stone sort of flavours, and behind that there are these slightly appley, liminess really coming through there, going on towards the finish where it's a more sort of lemony. It sort of perhaps doesn't quite have the citric weight that the light of the initial limey burst. And over the top of that, there are floral notes. And a creamy texture. The wine is medium to full-bodied. It says on the bottle that the alcohol is 14.5%, and that seems reasonable. But the good acidity stops the finish from being sort of hot and alcoholic. It's lifting those sort of citric notes off the end there and giving a lovely long finish. The producers suggest the wine could age for up to 7 years. I think you're probably fine to keep it if you want to for up to 10 years, and it will gain complexity and sort of probably more honeyed notes in bottle, maybe a little sort of oily petrol-y sort of note, almost like a Riesling might. But frankly, the wine is lovely and fresh and crisp, and for summer drinking, it's absolutely fantastic. So if you haven't tried Assyrtiko from Santorini, well worth giving it a go. They're not particularly expensive wines, and they really do deliver in terms of quality and interest. So thank you very much for watching. Bye now.